The prairie evening was settling into silence when the Apache warrior rode back into camp, his horse lathered with sweat and dust. He had left before dawn, searching desperately for medicine men in nearby camps, anyone who might know what to do about the burning fever that had gripped his little girl. He expected to return to quiet, to shadows, to his warriors standing guard around the lodge. Instead, he heard voices, soft ones. A woman's voice. His jaw tightened immediately. He had given a strict order before he left. No one enters his home. No one touches his daughter. Not the curious. Not the pitying. Not outsiders, especially not the white widow who had been living near the trading post. The one who sometimes tended sick people with strange herbs and strange prayers. He dismounted in one sharp motion and strode toward the lodge. The closer he came, the clearer the sound became, the gentle whisper of a woman speaking calmly, like she was soothing a child through a nightmare. The warrior lifted the flap and froze. There she was, kneeling beside his daughter, her sleeves rolled up. Her basket opened. A damp cloth rested on the child's forehead. She held the little girl's small hand, murmuring words meant to calm, not magic, not arrogance, just kindness. The little girl's breathing was ragged, her cheeks too red, her lips cracked with dryness. Sweat soaked her braids. The widow looked up, startled, but did not move away. Their eyes locked, and for a heartbeat. The world tightened like a bowstring. "You were told to stay out," he said quietly. But his voice was iron. "I know," she answered, steady but gentle. But she was alone, and getting worse. Anger surged through him, not because she was here, but because fear was clawing at his chest. Fear was something he didn't allow himself to feel. Warriors could be wounded, yes, but not terrified. He felt terrified. He stepped forward, towering over her. "You defied my order." She nodded. No excuses, no trembling. Just honesty. Yes, because I've seen children die when no one did anything. And I refuse to stand outside and watch it happen again. The words hit something in him. Memories of his wife flashed. The fever, the weakness, the helplessness. He had stood there then too, unable to stop death. His voice grew harsher to hide the pain. "Everyone, out!" Two elderly women who had slipped inside to watch the white healer jumped to their feet instantly. Members of his own tribe did not question him. They hurried out into the fading light, but when the widow shifted as though to stand, he lifted a hand. "Not you." The decision surprised even him. He wasn't forgiving her. He wasn't welcoming her. He simply saw something he could not ignore. She was calm where he felt storm. She sat back, blinking, unsure. "You still want me here?" "I want my daughter to live," he answered, voice low. "If you know something that helps, do it. But hear me, if you harm her—" "I won't," she said softly. "I lost a child too." Silence fell. He swallowed hard. The words sinking deeper than any knife. She worked carefully, wiping the fevered skin with cool cloths, preparing an herbal brew that smelled strange but clean. She explained everything she did, not to prove herself, but to reassure him. "So the body fights the fever," she said. "We help it, not fear it." The warrior knelt finally, closer to his daughter, his hand hovering above her hair. He dared not touch at first, as if his own strength might break her. "She was strong," he whispered, mostly to himself. "She laughed yesterday." "She chased birds?" "That's what fever does," the widow replied. "It steals the strong first, because they fight so hard." The night deepened around them. Outside, the tribe whispered, uneasy that a white woman sat in their warrior's lodge. But inside, there was only the flicker of firelight, the steady rhythm of cloth to water, and the warrior's silent prayers. Every few minutes, he watched his daughter's chest rise, terrified it might stop. And slowly, despite the tension, something shifted. Not trust, not yet, but the beginning of it. He realized she had come knowing he might throw her out, knowing he might hate her, knowing she could be blamed if anything went wrong, yet she stayed. Not for glory, not for respect, for the child, and for the first time since the fever began, the warrior felt something slip past the fear. Hope night wrapped itself around the camp like a heavy blanket. And inside the lodge, the air smelled of smoke, damp cloth, and the faint, earthy scent of the widow's herbs. The Apache warrior sat cross-legged near the fire, eyes fixed on his daughter. He had not moved in what felt like hours. His hands, usually so steady, rested tensely on his knees. The widow worked quietly. She didn't chatter. She didn't boast. She didn't act like someone who thought she knew better than him. She simply watched the girl closely, feeling her pulse, checking her breathing, wiping her brow. "Her fever is still high," he said, unable to hide the fear in his voice. "Yes," the widow answered gently. "But her body is fighting. We watch for the right signs." He wanted certainty. Warriors lived on certainty, clear orders, clear enemies, clear paths forward. Sickness was an enemy you could not strike. He clenched his jaw. "What signs?" He pressed. "That the fever rises, then breaks," she replied, dipping the cloth again. "That her breathing evens, that her skin cools. Sometimes it takes all night." All night. He felt the weight of those words. He remembered another fevered night, the night his wife died. He had listened to the medicine man then. He had trusted. And still, he had buried the woman who carried his laughter. A deep heaviness pressed against his ribs. What if it does not break? The widow paused. She did not lie to him. "Then we fight harder." He respected that answer more than any false promise. The girl whimpered in her sleep. Instantly his body leaned forward, protective, instinctive. The widow gently lifted the child's head and coaxed a few slow sips of water into her mouth. "She must drink," she whispered. "Even a little." The warrior steadied the girl's shoulders while the widow worked. For the first time, their hands brushed rough skin against delicate fingers. Neither pulled away. Outside, voices murmured. Someone approached the lodge, then hesitated. A man's voice called softly, "Brother." "The elders say, 'Stay out,'" the warrior replied. Sharp as flint, footsteps retreated. He stared at the widow, almost challenging her. "They think you bring bad spirits." She nodded, not insulted. "They're afraid. Fear creates stories." His brows knitted. "And you? Are you afraid?" She hesitated, then answered truthfully, "Yes, but not of them." Her eyes lowered to the sleeping child. "Of losing someone helpless." The words stirred something in him, honesty layered with grief. "How did your child die?" he asked quietly. Her throat tightened. For a moment he regretted asking, but she spoke anyway. "Winter sickness. We were snowed in. No doctor. No help." She swallowed hard. "I wrapped him in every blanket I had. Sang to him. Held him. But it wasn't enough." A silence filled the lodge, heavy but shared. She blinked back tears quickly. "I promised after that. If another child needed me, I wouldn't walk away." He studied her, not a woman seeking attention, not someone pretending to be strong, someone shaped by loss, like him. The fire crackled softly. The child shifted again, her breathing catching, then easing. The widow mixed another small portion of herbs into water and cooled it before offering it. "Bitter," she warned softly. He gently touched his daughter's cheek. "Drink, little bird," he whispered in Apache. "Listen to the wind. It carries strength." The widow didn't understand the words, but she understood the tenderness. Time moved slowly. He dozed for seconds at a time, waking with a jolt whenever she moved, whenever the child sighed. The widow never stopped watching Dot. At one point, she swayed with exhaustion. "You should rest," he murmured. Dot. She shook her head. "If I rest, I might miss the moment she needs me. I've learned that lesson too hard." He exhaled, almost a sigh. "Then at least sit closer to the fire. You are shaking." She shifted reluctantly, and for the first time, he placed a blanket across her shoulders. It surprised them both. "Thank you," she whispered. He didn't reply, but something inside him softened. Hours later, the wind outside changed. The air cooled. A faint breeze slipped through the lodge, as if the night itself had taken a breath. The widow leaned over the girl, hand on her forehead. She went still. The warrior's heart thundered. "What is it?" A slow smile, small, cautious, touched the widow's lips. "She's sweating." She lifted the cloth. "The fever is shifting." He leaned in, hardly daring to hope. The child's skin, once burning hot, felt damp and just slightly cooler. He closed his eyes. A whispered thanks left his lips, not loud, not proud, just raw gratitude. But the widow lifted a hand gently. "Not yet," she cautioned. "We watch. The night still has teeth." He nodded. For once he did not argue, he simply stayed, watching over both of them, warrior, widow, and child, holding the fragile space between fear and faith. Dawn crept slowly, like it was afraid to enter the lodge. The first thin strip of light touched the doorway, and the Apache warrior realized, with surprise, that he had not left his daughter's side the entire night. His back ached. His eyes burned. But he did not move. The widow was still awake, too, though exhaustion clung to her like a shadow. Her hair had slipped loose, falling across her shoulders. She kept one hand lightly on the child's wrist, counting the faint rhythm of her pulse for a while. There was only quiet breathing and the soft crackle of dying embers. Then the little girl stirred, not a fevered thrash this time, a small, weak stretch like a bird testing its wings. The warrior leaned forward instantly. "Little bird?" Her eyelids fluttered. She blinked once, twice. Eyes heavy but aware, the widow's breath caught with relief. "That's good," she whispered. "Very good." The girl's lips parted. "Water." The warrior moved before anyone else could. He lifted the cup, steady hands guiding it as though it were sacred. Slowly, the widow reminded softly, he helped his daughter sip. When she swallowed, his chest flooded with something fierce and overwhelming, the kind of emotion a warrior never showed. He swallowed hard. "You scared me," he murmured. Voice breaking despite himself, the child gave a faint smile before drifting back into rest. The widow watched quietly, understanding the moment did not belong to her. Outside, voices began to stir. People were waking. Fire pits were crackling back to life. Women were grinding corn and whispering. About the night, they did not know yet. They still imagined the worst. The widow sat back a little, rubbing her tired eyes. "She isn't safe yet," she warned gently. "The fever may rise again, but the body has turned. That is our first victory." He nodded, still staring at his daughter, this time not in fear, but in wonder. "You stayed," he said quietly. It was not accusation. It was realization. She gave a small, tired laugh. "I told you, I don't walk away anymore." He studied her face, pale with fatigue, determined, honest. There was something dangerous about respect. Once it formed, it challenged old beliefs. He had been raised to distrust her kind. Traders lead. Settlers push. Promises broke. But this woman, she had risked the tribe's anger and possibly his wrath, with no promise of reward. "You could have died for disobeying me," he said. She met his gaze. "Then at least I would know I tried." The words lodged deep. For a long moment neither spoke. A rustle sounded outside. More footsteps. Then the lodge flap twitched. An elder's face appeared. "Warrior," he said cautiously, eyes darting past him toward the widow. "We must see the child." The warrior rose slowly to his feet. His presence filled the space, not violent but immovable. "You will wait." The elder stiffened, offended. This woman helped my daughter breathe," the warrior interrupted, voice steady but sharp. "You will not question that." A hush fell. The elder hesitated, then bowed his head slightly and stepped back. The widow watched, surprised. He had not defended her last night. He had only tolerated her. Now he was shielding her. When he turned back to her, she looked at him carefully. "You didn't have to do that?" "Yes," he said simply. "I did?" He seated himself again beside his daughter. The widow checked the girl's forehead once more, adjusting the cloth. Hours stretched into morning. The fever returned, but weaker this time. The widow guided him through what to do, wiping gently, offering sips of water, letting the child rest without panic. He followed every instruction, not blindly, but with new trust. As the sun rose higher, the child slept peacefully again. The warrior finally exhaled. "You should sleep," he told the widow. "Now I will watch." She hesitated, always hesitant to release control, then nodded. She settled on the far side of the lodge near the warmth of the fire, He pulled another blanket over her within moments. She drifted into sleep, for the first time since the fever began. The lodge felt calm. He sat in silence, watching the two resting forms, the woman who fought beside him, and the child who was his heart. He realized something he never expected. He was no longer alone in this battle, and that frightened him almost as much as the fever had, because needing someone was far more dangerous than losing them. By midday, the lodge had settled into a fragile quiet. The widow slept deeply, exhaustion finally claiming her. Her chest rose and fell in slow, steady breaths. Strands of hair brushed across her cheek, and without thinking, the warrior gently moved them aside so they wouldn't irritate her face. He froze afterward. His hand lingered in the air. He had not meant to touch her. He pulled back. Unsettled by the strange softness that had entered his chest, his attention returned to his daughter. She slept peacefully now, her fever lower. Not gone, but no longer raging like wildfire. For the first time in days, he allowed himself to breathe. Outside, whispers continued. Children ran past the lodge, curious. Warriors spoke low. Some wondered aloud whether the White Widow had cursed the child. Others wondered if she had saved her. The tension pressed at the lodge walls like wind. The flap rustled again. This time, his sister entered quietly, eyes full of worry. She knelt near him. Brother, she whispered. Tell me truth. Is she dying? He shook his head slowly but with certainty. No, not today. Her shoulders sagged with relief. Only then did she notice the widow sleeping. You allowed her inside. Still, yes. His sister studied him. You? Once said outsiders bring only trouble. He? Didn't answer right away. I was wrong. About this one, he said at last. She gave a thoughtful nod, then laid her hand gently on the girl's ankle before leaving again. Silence settled once more, after some time. The widow stirred, her eyes opened slowly, confusion flickering across her face before memory returned. She sat up quickly. The fever? Lower, he said. She rests. Her shoulders relaxed. She let out a shaky breath. Good, he handed her a small bowl of broth he had warmed. Eat. She blinked at it. You cooked? A faint ghost of a smile touched his lips. I can keep someone alive with more than a spear. She smiled back, tired but warm, and obeyed. The simple food steadied her strength. Then, cautiously, she asked, Has the tribe said anything? His jaw tightened. They say much. Some good, some not. She nodded, unsurprised. Fear always looks for a target. He met her gaze. If they demand you leave, I will stand in their way. Her spoon paused. You don't have to. Yes, he said again, firm. I do. She searched his face, trying to understand him. Not just the warrior, but the man beneath. You loved your wife very much, she said gently. He looked away. As though the memory stung, she was the only one who could calm my storms. When she died, the world became noise. Anger was easier to carry than grief. The confession surprised even him. The widow listened quietly, not pitying, simply present. I chose anger after my husband died, she admitted softly, until it made me hard toward everyone else. Then I realized the anger was killing what was left of me. They fell into silence again. Not heavy. Shared. The child shifted, murmured, then settled. The widow reached out and checked her forehead once more. It will come and go today, she said. We keep her cool. We keep her drinking. We let her body do the rest. He nodded. A shout outside suddenly broke the peace. Men's voices, sharp, heated. The warriors stood instantly and stepped outside. The widow remained inside, tense. Several warriors gathered nearby, elders among them. One pointed toward the lodge. This cannot continue, the elder said. A white woman sits in our warrior's home. The people grow uneasy. She saved the child, the warrior replied calmly, or perhaps she caused the sickness only to cure it. Someone spat, murmurs of agreement. Rippled. The warrior's expression hardened. My daughter became sick before she ever saw this. Woman. Still, the elder argued. Our customs, my child, he cut in, voice strong, is not a custom. She is flesh, blood, life. This woman stays until my daughter walks again. The crowd quieted. No one moved against him. His authority was not easily challenged. Slowly, they drifted away, not convinced, but unwilling to face him. When he returned inside, the widow looked up. They want me gone, don't they? Yes, he sank down beside his daughter again. But I do not care. She exhaled, but her eyes held worry, not for herself, but for the trouble she could cause him. You'll pay a price for protecting me? He looked at his child, small, fragile, breathing. Then it is worth paying. The widow lowered her gaze, touched deeply, and frightened by how much those words moved her. As evening crept closer again. The fever rose once more, but weaker, shorter, easier to control. Together, silently, the warrior and widow faced it, side by side. Not as enemies, not quite as friends, something new and dangerous forming between them. Trust tied with something warmer, something both of them were still too afraid to name. The storm had finally passed, not the one in the sky that had moved on before dawn. The storm inside the camp, however, lingered. For 2 days, the girl lay quiet, her fever easing little by little. Her breathing had steadied, her body finally resting instead of fighting. The people began whispering that the danger might truly be fading, but the silence between the Apache warrior and the white widow was colder than the night air. He spoke to her only when necessary. Short words, measured, controlled. If every syllable cost him something, she felt it each time. She would feed the child broth. He would watch. If she wiped the girl's forehead, he stood always a pace behind, tense, like a bow drawn but not released. Not angry. Wary. Protective. And still, she stayed, though he had made it clear more than once. When she is safe. You go, she nodded each time, but something else had taken root in her, something she hadn't expected. Attachment. The kind that crept in quietly when you cared too, deeply without meaning to. She had lost before. A husband. A baby. A life she thought belonged to her. This child somehow reopened every door she'd closed. One night, the girl stirred, half awake, whispering weakly, "Mama?" The widow froze, the warrior stiffened, his eyes flickered, pain, love, guilt all at once. Then the small hand reached for the widow instead. Not because the child had replaced her mother, but because in sickness we reach for whoever is warm, whoever stays. The widow gently took the child's hand. "I'm here," she whispered softly. "Rest." The warrior turned away, not because it hurt that his daughter reached for another woman, but because he understood what it meant. This woman was no longer just intruding, she was becoming part of their survival, and that threatened everything he believed about outsiders. Later, while the girl slept, he finally spoke, not as a warrior, not as a chief of his home, but as a man. "You should leave before my people begin to question you," he said quietly. She looked up, tired but calm. "They already questioned me." He hesitated. "Yes." The honesty stung, but she appreciated it more than false kindness. He continued, "They lost family to settlers, to soldiers, to sickness brought by white hands. They see you, and they remember loss." The widow folded her hands. "And you?" she asked. He did not answer at first. The fire cracked softly between them. Finally, "Yes," he said. "I remember too." She swallowed. In that moment, she saw not the hardened warrior, but a grieving man who had buried too many people. His wife. Friends. Brothers. She wanted to say she was sorry, but apologies could not heal wounds carved into history. So instead, she said only, "I understand why they hate me, why you fear me staying. But I did not come here to hurt anyone." He studied her face carefully. "I know," he said. "That is what makes this harder." Silence again, but not cold now. Heavy. True. The girl coughed in her sleep, and both of them moved toward her at once, their hands brushing as they reached to help. They both froze, neither moved away right away. There was no romance in that touch yet. No spark of heat. Just shared fear, shared care, shared responsibility. He withdrew first, Jaw tight. You have done much, he said roughly. But do not mistake this for belonging. She nodded, accepting the wound, not because it didn't hurt, but because it was honest. I won't, she said softly. I know I am only passing through your world. He looked at her for a long moment, then turned away. As if he didn't trust himself to speak again, outside, elders gathered near the fire. Talking quietly, they had seen enough. They had watched the widow stay when it was dangerous, work when she was exhausted, receive suspicion and still not leave, and they began to argue. Among themselves, some wanted her gone immediately. Others said, the Creator sent help. Do not spit on the blessing. The warrior listened, without stepping into the circle, because his conflict was no longer about the elders. It was inside his own chest. He had invited no help, but help had come anyway. And sometimes the hardest battle was not against an enemy, but against pride. He looked back through the door flap, watching the widow's tired figure sitting beside his sleeping daughter. She had saved the girl's life. He knew it, and yet he also knew letting her stay too long would change things. Change his daughter. Change the camp. Change him. And change was always dangerous. He exhaled slowly. Tomorrow, he told himself, tomorrow he would decide, not as a father. Not as a grieving husband, but as a man responsible for everyone under his protection. The night grew still, but the real storm had only begun. Morning arrived gently. No wind, no thunder, no angry voices. Just the soft rustle of dawn moving through the camp. The girl woke first. Color had returned to her cheeks, her eyes clearer than they had been in days. She blinked slowly, then smiled weakly. Papa? The warrior was beside her instantly, kneeling, his hand cupping her face, relief flooding his features so deeply it almost broke him. I am here, he murmured. The widow stepped back, letting the two have space. She felt both joy and ache at once, the strange ache of knowing her task was nearly finished, and that meant it was time to go. The elders arrived not long after. Their expressions were unreadable. They looked at the girl. The warrior, then at the widow, the oldest among them, spoke first. Your daughter lives. The warrior nodded quietly. She does. Another elder's gaze sharpened. And the white woman remains. The widow lowered her eyes, ready for what was coming. She expected harsh words, accusations, blame. Instead, the elder simply said, it is time to decide. The warrior stood slowly. He did not look at the widow at first. Instead, he looked at the mountains beyond the camp, the place he went. In his heart, when choices were too heavy, he had faced enemies, battles, hunger, winter, but nothing felt as difficult as choosing between gratitude and fear, between tradition and change, between protecting his people and acknowledging a life owed. He turned at last. His voice was steady, but softer than anyone had ever heard it. She stays until my daughter is strong enough to walk. After that, I will take her to the edge of our land and escort her away. Murmurs broke out among the crowd, some angry, some relieved, some thoughtful. The widow lifted her head, surprised, not because he was letting her stay longer, but because he was taking responsibility for her safety once she left. He continued, she came with no weapon. She asked for nothing. She gave what she knew and risked herself when she could have walked away. I will not send her into danger like a dog chased from a yard. She leaves in peace. The elders exchanged looks. They did not fully like the decision, but they respected. The man who made it, the oldest, nodded. So, it will be. The crowd slowly broke. Apart. Life moved forward. The widow knelt beside the girl again, brushing hair back softly. You're going to be just fine, she whispered. The child smiled faintly. Will you still be here tonight? Yes, she said gently. A little while longer. That night, the warrior brought her food, not out of obligation, but out of something more human. Respect. He set the bowl beside her, then sat across the fire. For once, there was no tension. Just quiet. You could have left, he said. Yes, but you stayed. She nodded, because she needed someone. And because I know what it is to watch someone fade and feel helpless. Their eyes met. No declarations. No sudden romance. Just understanding. He finally spoke again. When the time comes, I will make sure you reach safety. She smiled softly. Thank you. Days passed. The girl grew stronger, walking, laughing, hungry again. The day came when the widow packed her few belongings, the worn shawl, the small pouch of herbs, the last of the remedies she had carried. The girl clung to her. Don't go. The widow swallowed back tears. I have to, she said gently. Your father is here, and you will grow strong. The warrior watched silently, something tight in his chest. When they left the camp together, it was quiet. No one followed. No one threatened. The land stretched wide ahead of them. Golden under the afternoon sun, they walked for hours. At the ridge overlooking the valley. He finally stopped. This is where I leave you, he said. The path below wound toward distant settlement roads. Safer ground. A way forward. She turned to face him. Thank you. For trusting me? Even a little. He shook his head faintly. I did not trust easily, he said. But I saw your heart, and I will remember what you did. For a moment, neither moved. There was something between them now, not love. Not yet, but a thread woven from shared struggle, respect, and loss. She lifted her bag. He raised a hand in farewell. She started down the path. Halfway down, she paused, turned, and looked back. He was still standing there. Silent. Watching. Protecting. Even at this distance, she lifted her hand once more. He answered with the slightest nod. Then she walked on. And though their worlds remained different, neither would ever forget the night a white widow refused to leave, and the Apache warrior who discovered that sometimes the bravest act is not drawing a weapon, but opening a door. Night returned, softer than before, not as threatening, but still watchful. The warrior added wood to the fire, careful not to let the room grow too hot. The widow wrung out another cloth and laid it gently across the child's brow. The girl murmured in sleep but did not thrash. Her breathing, once ragged and desperate, had steadied into a slow rhythm. Progress. But neither dared relax completely. The warrior sat close enough that his knee nearly brushed the widow's skirt. They worked in quiet rhythm now, as if they had done this together 100 times. He lifted his daughter. She cooled her skin. He guided water to her lips. She whispered calm encouragement. No orders. No arguments. Only shared purpose. After a while he spoke, voice low. When my wife died, many came to offer words. None helped. He stared into the flames. You came and offered hands instead. That is different. The widow paused, then answered softly, words can't break fevers, or mend grief, only time. And kindness. He thought about that. Time, he understood. Kindness felt far more dangerous. He glanced at her hands, steady, scarred in places, clearly familiar with work. Not fragile at all. You live alone, he said. Not a question, she nodded. Since my husband passed, there's been no one else. I trade herbs and remedies for food. Sometimes I help women birth babies. Sometimes I bury them. A flicker of sadness passed across her face. I've learned to sleep light. Trouble doesn't knock first. He understood that too well. Silence stretched. Comfortable, steady. Outside, coyotes sang far off. A breeze brushed the lodge, carrying the scent of sage and earth. The world felt larger than their fears for a moment. The girl shifted again. Her eyes opened, this time clearer. Father? His heart leaped. He leaned in quickly, taking her small hand in both of his. I am here, he murmured. I have not left. She blinked slowly, then noticed the widow. Recognition softened her expression. You stayed. The widow smiled gently. Of course I did. You're too important to give up on. The girl gave a tiny nod, then slipped back into sleep, peaceful. Not fevered. The warrior swallowed hard. She remembers you. Children remember the ones who sit with them when they're afraid, the widow replied quietly. He said nothing, but that truth settled deeply inside him. Moments later, the lodge flap brushed open again. The warrior tensed, but it was only a small boy bringing a pot of fresh water. Eyes wide with curiosity. For the chief warrior, he said nervously. My mother sent it. The warrior nodded, accepting it. Tell her I am grateful. The boy's gaze darted toward the widow, then away, embarrassed at being caught staring. He scampered out. The widow let out a small breath. Some are softening. Some, he agreed. Others wait for failure. Her eyes flicked toward him. Then we won't give them any. A faint smile tugged at his mouth. Unexpected, dangerous hours passed. The fever flickered like a dying candle. Up, then down, each rise weaker than the last. The widow explained every change, never keeping him in the dark. When the girl slept again, the widow finally leaned back, rubbing at her tired shoulders. Your turn to rest, he said quietly. She opened her mouth to argue, then stopped. She saw the steadiness in his gaze, the confidence in his hands now as he checked the cloth and water himself. You've learned quickly, she admitted. He shrugged. A father learns anything when death stands close. She hesitated, then nodded. Wake me if anything changes. She lay near the fire again, curling beneath the blanket. Within moments, sleep wrapped around her. He watched her for a moment, surprised by the strange sense of responsibility he felt toward her safety. Then he turned back to his daughter. The hours slid by. He listened to every breath, every tiny sigh, every faint rustle of quilt. And in the stillness, memories rose, his wife's laughter, her hands braiding their daughter's hair. The way she would tease him for being too serious. He spoke softly, barely above a whisper. Little bird, your mother would not forgive me if I let you go. As if answering, the girl shifted, breathing deeper. The fire burned lower. The night thinned. Dawn waited beyond the horizon. And somewhere in that quiet space, the warrior realized something profound. He no longer guarded just his child. He guarded the widow too, this stubborn, gentle woman who refused to leave even when the world pushed her. If harm came to her now, it would wound him as surely as any blade. The realization unsettled him, and yet it warmed him. The storm inside his chest had begun to change shape, less rage, more purpose. Outside, the first bird called. Inside, the child slept peacefully, and the warrior, for the first time since the fever began, allowed his shoulders to lower, whispering a single promise into the dim morning. You are safe. Both of you. Morning broke bright and clean. Sunlight filtered through the lodge, soft stripes stretching across the floor. The fire had burned down to warm coals. For a moment, everything felt strangely peaceful, like the world had remembered how to breathe. The widow stirred first. She blinked, confused, then focused on the child. Her healer's instincts were faster than her waking thoughts. She moved to the girl's side, pressing a gentle hand to her forehead, checking her pulse, studying her lips and color. The warrior watched closely. Well? He asked, unable to hide the tension. A slow smile spread across her face. Cool, she said. Steady. Her body is winning. He exhaled long and deep, as though releasing a stone he had carried inside his lungs. The girl's eyes fluttered open again, clearer than before. She looked from the widow to her father. I'm hungry, she whispered. The warrior let out a choked laugh, eyes glistening. Hunger is the sound of life, the widow said, smiling. But only broth for now. He helped the girl sit slightly. The widow offered a small bowl, guiding slow sips. The child drank, then rested, cheeks no longer burning but gently flushed. Outside, life moved on. Birds, voices, the clatter of daily chores. Word spread quickly. Curious eyes lingered near the lodge. Questions whispered like insects in tall grass. Is she better? Is she alive? Did the white widow heal her? Or curse, then cure? Truth traveled slower than fear. A shadow appeared at the doorway, the same elder from before. He entered carefully, bowing his head. He expected anger. The warrior waited. The elder's gaze landed on the child. His brows lifted, astonishment breaking across his stern face. She lives. She does, the warrior replied evenly. The elder's eyes shifted to the widow. For a long moment he said nothing. Then, with a rough exhale, he spoke, "The people feared you. Perhaps we were wrong." The widow didn't gloat, didn't smile. She dipped her head, humble. "I fear sickness more than judgment," she said quietly. "And I wish no one harm." The elder nodded, begrudging but sincere, before leaving. The tension loosened a notch. The warrior looked at her differently. "You did not demand thanks." She shrugged lightly. "Healing isn't about pride. If they stop fearing what they don't understand, that's enough." His gaze lingered on her face, the strength, the gentleness. He realized something unfamiliar. He admired her. Later, his sister returned with fresh food, laying it beside the fire. She touched the widow's shoulder gently. "Thank you," she said simply. The widow blinked, surprised, then smiled. The girl dozed again after eating. The widow cleaned her supplies, washed cloths, and tidied the lodge. Quiet, thoughtful, respectful of the space. The warrior finally spoke. "When she is strong again, you will leave?" She paused. "Yes," she said softly. "Staying longer would make people uneasy. I don't want to be the storm after the fever passes." Something tightened inside him. See? He hadn't expected the words to sting, but they did. She noticed the change in his expression. "You don't want more trouble." "Because of me," she added, trying to make it easier. He shook his head slowly. "It is not trouble I think of." Their eyes met, and for a moment, silence spoke louder than words. He looked away first, unsettled by how much that single moment felt like standing at the edge of a cliff. The girl stirred again, and they both shifted instinctively, back to purpose, back to care. By afternoon, she was sitting upright, smiling weakly, asking questions. The widow showed her how to breathe slowly, how to sip water, how to rest without fighting it. "You are strong," she said gently. "But strength isn't always running. Sometimes it's staying still long enough to heal." The warrior listened as carefully as the child did. Later, as the sun lowered, painting the sky in soft fire, the widow quietly gathered her things. He watched. "You are preparing to go already." "Not tonight," she said. "But I don't like to overstay in someone else's world." He stood and stepped closer. "This is not just my world anymore," he said quietly. "You walked into it when others turned away." Her breath caught, words hanging between them. "Fragile." She closed her basket slowly. "Then I am honored to have been allowed in," she whispered, but the truth lingered. She still intended to leave. Not because she wanted to, because she believed she must. The warrior turned toward the fading light, his jaw tightening, a decision forming somewhere deep inside him. One he wasn't ready to speak aloud yet, because letting her walk away suddenly felt far harder than he expected.